thank you, Harold. Thank you, everybody, for coming. When I accepted this date, I didn't realize that I would have such stiff competition for an audience, and I very much appreciate that you are with me tonight. And I believe Harold said that he's going to be videotaping this, and so we'll post it online. As he said, I am a volunteer rather, for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, in a public outreach program called Solar System Ambassadors. There are over 1,000 of us now around the country who give programs just like this or similar to this in their own communities. Each one of us, we're free to develop whatever program we want, as long as we do something that deals with the missions that JPL is involved in. I don't have a background in astronomy or engineering. I am an enthusiastic layperson, and I hope to share with you what I know, and I hope you will find the presentation enjoyable. So we will begin, and I will look at my notes here. I hope we've driven all the demons out of my computer by now. And so now I hit stop video, okay, and I've done that now. And then I hit share screen. And then I hit that one. And then I hit
this one.
This one.
There you go. Now hit share.
And now hit share. Okay.
And now hit play.
There we go. Okay. Everything seems to be working so far. My program tonight is called Hidden Wonders in Yosemite's Night Sky: Stars, Planets, and Galaxies. I usually give this program, of course, at the Yosemite Conservation Heritage Center in Yosemite Valley, and that's where I'm going to begin the program tonight. Anyone who has been there in Yosemite will agree that it is one of our nation's most beautiful national parks, and visitors come from all over the world to enjoy the grandeur of its mountain scenery. But while most of the activities take place during the daytime hours, Yosemite has something to offer when the sun goes down as well, and that is its dark skies. Being miles away from bright city lights make Yosemite a great place from which to look at the stars. There are millions of stars visible on moonless nights in the park, and stargazers set up telescopes at places like Glacier Point, Tuolumne Meadows, Wawona, and even Yosemite Valley to get their best look at them. But there's far more out there than what meets the eye, even on the clearest night. So for my program this evening, I want to take you beyond what can be seen in ground-based telescopes and give you a chance to discover some of the amazing phenomena present in the night sky that's hidden from our eyes. Now, when it comes to studying the heavens, we're not limited to the visible wavelengths that our eyes can detect. All celestial objects emit various forms of electromagnetic radiation. And in order to study the universe in detail, scientists use several different types of telescopes and imaging equipment to detect these different types of emitted radiation. These include X-ray, ultraviolet, infrared, and even radio wavelengths, in addition to visible light. In this image, you can see the Whirlpool galaxy seen in the various wavelengths, from radio waves on the far right to X-rays and gamma rays on the far left. This is the Crab Nebula, and it is a remnant of a supernova. A supernova is the violent explosion of stellar material from a very massive star at the end of its life. The explosion expels almost all of the star's material into the surrounding space, thereby enriching it with higher mass chemicals such as silicon, calcium, and nickel. In addition, the expanding shock waves from the supernova explosion will often trigger the formation of new stars. Now, here's an example of the differences that can be seen at different wavelengths, assuming it works. This composite image combines data from 5 different telescopes. The red color indicates radio waves. The green is what can be seen in visible light. The blue color, which is coming up here, is an ultraviolet image, and the purple color is an X-ray image that clearly reveals a neutron star at the center of the nebula. A neutron star is a collapsed core of a massive supergiant star that has gone supernova. Okay, I'd like to introduce you to three of the most important orbiting space telescopes, and this one needs no introduction. This is the Hubble Space Telescope. Hubble has revolutionized modern astronomy by being both a tool for making new discoveries, as well as driving astronomical research in general. Its cameras cover a wide range of wavelengths from near infrared to ultraviolet. The second one is the Spitzer Space Telescope, which has been studying the universe at infrared wavelengths. Its mission ended this year and was to be replaced by the launch of NASA's next flagship telescope, the James T. Webb Telescope, which they can't seem to get off the ground. It was supposed to launch in 2007, but unfortunately, its launch has once again been delayed, this time mostly due to the coronavirus pandemic. The new liftoff date will not be until October 31st, 2021. This is the Chandra Space Telescope, and it allows scientists to obtain images at X-ray wavelengths. Many things in space emit X-rays, including black holes, neutron stars, binary star systems, and supernova remnants. So it's a very important component of the orbiting spacecraft program. So let's get started on our journey. And in order to do so, we need a map of the night sky. And thanks to the ancient Greeks and ancient Babylonians, we have a really good one. Since the dawn of time, humans have looked into the night sky and seen patterns formed by prominent stars in the heavens. And to them, these patterns represented heroes and gods, mythical beasts, and such from their mythology. Today, these ancient star patterns are a useful tool for finding deep space objects, like those we're going to see tonight. Now, when an astronomer says an object is in a given constellation, they mean that it is located within one of these boundaries of defined areas of sky. Now, constellations we see may vary with the seasons, and this is due to two things: the daily rotation of the Earth on its axis and its year-long orbit around the sun. Now, in this image, that is definitely not Mars in the top part of the image, but this was the best illustration I could find, and it is labeled either in French or Spanish. I don't know for sure. So what we're looking at is Earth's position in March, June, September, and December. And as you can see, as the Earth moves along in its 365-day orbit around the sun, its location in the heavens changes, and different constellations become visible. This illustration shows constellations at the plane of the ecliptic during the various months of the year. And if you look to the upper left and see September, just beneath that word, you can see a representation of the two sides of the Earth. One side is in daylight, facing the sun, and the other one is facing away from the sun and is at night. Now, during the daylight hours, the constellations across from it, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, can't be seen because the sun's brightness obscures their view. However, the night side of the Earth, which is facing away from the sun, makes it possible to see constellations like Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, and Scorpio. And as the Earth moves in its somewhat circular orbit around the sun, the constellations that can be seen changes. Now, having said that, there are some stars that are visible all year round, as can be seen in this image. You can see in the northern hemisphere, Gemini and Cassiopeia, that are in the upper right of that celestial sphere, are visible in the northern hemisphere year-round. It is only those like Virgo, which is at the celestial equator, that becomes obscured during the various times of the year. Okay, let's get started. We'll begin our exploration of the night sky with one of the best known constellations, and that is Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. It's probably the most recognizable pattern in the Northern Hemisphere is the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper itself is not a constellation, but rather it is called an asterism, which is a pattern of stars that are part of a larger constellation. Now, the right side of the bowl of the Big Dipper points to the North Star, Polaris. Polaris was a very important star to early navigators because just like a compass always points to the north, so does Polaris indicate north. So once navigators were able to locate this star, they could figure out which way to travel, and that would help them stay on course. So if you can find Polaris in the night sky, you can also use it as a reference to find other constellations because it never moves no matter where you are in the Northern Hemisphere. Here in this time-lapsed image, you can see star trails, which reflect the Earth's daily rotation on its axis. And at the very center is the star Polaris. When astronomers point their orbiting space telescopes toward Ursa Major, they can see two dazzling stellar objects. One is the Pinwheel Galaxy, which is a beautiful spiral galaxy that is seen face on. A galaxy is a massive, gravitationally bound system that consists of stars, stellar remnants, interstellar medium of dust and gas, and dark matter, which is an important but poorly understood component. This image was taken by the Hubble Space Telescope and combines both visible and infrared light photos. The second galaxy is in Ursa Major is a cigar galaxy. And in contrast to the Pinwheel Galaxy, which is seen face on, the cigar galaxy is seen edge on. And it owes its name to its long, narrow shape and the fact that it appears gray and ashy when observed through small telescopes. The next constellation we'll look at is Cepheus, which was the name of the king of Ethiopia in Greek mythology. The constellation is recognizable because it looks a bit like a tent. This rather spooky-looking object found in Cepheus is called the Ghost Nebula. It's actually clouds of cosmic dust. And if you can see on a small screen in the upper left of the image, you will be able to make out a couple of small human-like figures with arms raised, rising up from the top of the cloud structure. The Ghost Nebula is an example of a reflection nebula, which is a cloud of dust particles that reflect the light from a nearby star. Several stars can be seen embedded in this nebula, and their light is what gives the cloud its ghoulish brown color. Here's a visible light image taken by Hubble, where we can see clouds of interstellar dust and gas that seem to resemble the petals of an iris flower. At the center of the iris, we can see dusty hot clouds surrounding a young star. The dominant blue color of this nebula is the characteristic color of dust grains when they are reflecting starlight. This beautiful emission nebula is given the unfortunate name IC 1396. Now, emission nebula are glowing clouds of interstellar gas which have been ionized by some nearby energy source, most often high energy photons emitted from a nearby hot star. Now, you probably remember from high school chemistry that ionization is the process by which an atom or molecule acquires a positive or negative charge by gaining or losing electrons. Emission nebula emit light at various wavelengths, and hence the beautiful array of colors seen in this photo. Next, we go to the constellation Sagittarius, which represents the archer in Greek mythology. There are a lot of incredible celestial objects that can be found in Sagittarius. The Trifid Nebula is a well-known star-forming region. It is an unusual combination of an emission nebula, that's the left red-handed portion, a reflection nebula, which is what you see there in blue, and a dark nebula, which forms the gaps that trisect the center. And this nebula is so bright that it can often be seen with a small ground-based telescopes, making it a perennial favorite of amateur astronomers. This image was taken by Ronald Adams from his backyard in Oakdale, Louisiana in 2016. The red spider is an example of a planetary nebula. When stars that are approximately the mass of our own sun are nearing the end of their lives, they begin to release their gaseous outermost layers as they die. As these clouds of stellar material move away from the central star, they begin to acquire complex shapes and often beautiful symmetry, as can be seen in this image. And here's another one that is called Little Gem. The term planetary nebula is terribly misleading. These objects were given this name in the 18th century because astronomers of that time thought they resembled gas giant planets when they looked through their primitive telescopes. In fact, what we're seeing in this image is the last gasp of a dying star. These stars do not have enough mass to explode violently as a supernova, but instead puff away their outer layers as the cloud slowly dies. Here's another in Sagittarius, planetary nebula. It's called the Eye of Sauron. Sauron, you may remember, was the Dark Lord from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. These red, pink, and blue tinted bands of gas are the various layers of material being expelled by the central star at the heart of the nebula. Visiting the constellation Sagittarius this month is the planet Saturn. Saturn is regarded by many to be the most beautiful planet in our solar system because of the bright rings that orbit at its equator. For more than a decade, NASA's Cassini spacecraft, which arrived at Saturn in 2004, shared the wonders of Saturn and its family of icy moons with the world. But after 13 years of exploring Saturn, Cassini exhausted its fuel supply, and in 2017, the mission ended. The Cassini revealed in great detail the true wonders of Saturn, finding it to be a giant world ruled by raging storms and having one of the most amazing system of moons, as well as its beautiful ring system. There's still speculation as to how the ring system formed. One possibility is that two icy moons collided and the debris from the collision formed the rings. Further analysis of data from the Cassini mission will hopefully provide some answers to this intriguing question. Saturn has 63 moons in orbit around it, and they are among some of the most unusual in the solar system. One of these is called Hyperion, which looks a bit like a natural sponge, which I have shown here in the upper left. Also, the moon's rotation is chaotic. It tumbles around and wobbles so much that its orientation in space is unpredictable. Now, this one reminds me of the Death Star. And when I've shown this to people, many people think that this was the inspiration for George Lucas when he created the Death Star for the Star Wars saga. But that could not have been possible because Star Wars was released in 1977 and Mimas was not photographed for the first time until 1979 by the passing Voyager spacecraft. The moon that most intrigues scientists is Titan, and this is the only moon in the solar system with clouds and a dense planet-like atmosphere. And because these clouds obscure the surface, it had to be mapped using radar. The Cassini spacecraft carried a passenger with it to the Saturnian system, the Huygens probe, which was the first human-made object to land on a world in the outer solar system. Its mission was to perform an in-depth study of the atmosphere and the surface of Titan. This was important to the mission because scientists think conditions on Titan may be similar to those on Earth in its earliest stages of development. Titan has also been found to be a hotbed of organic molecules. harboring a soup of complex hydrocarbons similar to those thought to have existed over 4 billion years ago on the primordial Earth. Organic compounds are extremely important because they serve as the basis for all carbon-based life on Earth, an element that all living organisms contain. Cassini images coupled with the Huygens probe revealed that Titan is also a world with lakes and seas, but these seas are composed of liquid methane and ethane. You can see what looks like a rugged coastline in the upper radar image of Titan, which I have compared here with a similar feature from the California coastline. Titan also has vast arid regions of hydrocarbon-rich dunes at its equator, which I've compared here with massive sand dunes on Earth. The sand dunes have been found on Venus and Mars, but Titan is the only moon where sand dunes have been discovered. Moving on, the next constellation is Cygnus, the Swan, which is another one of the most recognizable constellations in the northern sky, and it features a prominent asterism known as the Northern Cross. About 8,000 years ago, before the dawn of recorded human history, a new light suddenly would have appeared in the night sky, no doubt terrifying the early humans who witnessed it. But after just a few weeks, it would have disappeared from sight. We now know that this light was a supernova. Today, all that remains are visible from that explosive event are these wisps, and they can only be seen through a very large telescope. The remnant has been given the name the Veil Nebula. This is the Saturn region in Cygnus, and it's a beautiful emission nebula surrounding the star Gamma Cygni. This region lies in the center of Cygnus's cross, the Northern Cross. Remember, an emission nebula is a cloud of interstellar gas and dust that emits light at various wavelengths, and that is what creates the beautiful range of colors that is seen here. A very rare astronomical phenomenon called a protoplanetary nebula was recently discovered in Cygnus. This particular example, which has been called the Minkowski's footprint after its discoverer, features two vast onion-shaped structures on either side of an aging star, giving it a distinctive shape. Protoplanetary nebula, like Minkowski's footprint, have very short lives, and this is why it's so uncommon to see one. But this is the very first evidence that a star is beginning to die. On to Gemini. Gemini is the Latin word for twins, and the constellation is associated with the twins Castor and Pollux in Greek mythology. If you're in the world's mid-northern latitudes, it's fairly easy to find it if you look to the right of the constellation Orion, which is a very easy to see constellation in the northern sky. This month, the planet Venus can be found in the constellation Gemini. Venus is the second planet from the sun, and it's brighter than any other planet or star in the night sky. This is due to its highly reflective cloud cover and its closeness to Earth. And its beautiful appearance in the sky is probably the reason why it was named for the Roman goddess of love and beauty. Until the discovery of Eris, the dwarf planet beyond the orbit of Pluto, which was discovered just a few years ago, Venus was the only planet to have been named for a goddess rather than a god. Venus is called both the morning and the evening star. In fact, Venus was once believed to be two different bodies. Because the orbit of Venus is inside the orbit of Earth, it is always relatively close to the sun in the sky. When Venus is trailing the sun and is at position 2 in the Venus cycle in the upper right, it comes into view shortly after the sun sets. This is when Venus is called the evening star, and it was given the name Vesper. In the photo at the upper left, you can see that Venus is so bright that it can still be seen just below and to the right of a very bright crescent moon, and before the skies are even completely dark at sunset. When Venus is on the other side of the sun, which is position 3 on the Venus cycle, it becomes visible in the morning before the sun rises, and therefore it's called the morning star. In ancient times, it was given the name Lucifer. A few people know that the word Lucifer literally means light bringing. On the contrary, most people associate the name Lucifer today with Satan, who rules the fires of hell. It's ironic, as it turns out, that our modern association with the name Lucifer is actually quite appropriate, given the true nature of the surface of Venus. These discoveries were made by spacecraft like JPL's Magellan in the early 1990s. In fact, Venus is more like hell than anyone had realized before. Because it was shrouded by its thick atmosphere, the surface remained hidden until radar equipment arrived to probe the planet's surface. Venus has been discovered to be the hottest world in the solar system, with temperatures that will melt lead, more than 850 degrees Fahrenheit. And its surface is dominated by volcanic formations. There's even speculation that volcanic activity may still be going on. Some really strange features that are unique to Venus have formed on the planet's surface, including pancake domes, where lava has pooled onto the surface, as can be seen in the lower left image, and tick volcanoes, which are a kind of massive landslide that occurs inside of a crater, and that's depicted in the picture on the upper right. Venus also has a hellish atmosphere that consists of mainly 95% carbon dioxide with clouds of sulfuric acid. And it's thought that active volcanoes may be fueling this runaway greenhouse effect that exists on the planet. So, as we've discovered, with planets as with people, outward physical appearance is not necessarily an indication of what's below the surface. Scorpius is one of the oldest named constellations in the sky, dating from the Middle Bronze Age in Babylon to about 1700 BCE. Scorpius holds an infamous place in Greek mythology, as it was the slayer of the beloved hunter Orion in Greek mythology. Now, August is a prime month for viewing the Milky Way. The Milky Way is the galaxy that contains our solar system, and it appears as a hazy band of light which is formed from stars that cannot be individually distinguished by the naked eye. After dark, the Milky Way extends up from low in the south, where it runs between the tail of Scorpius, that you can see on the lower right there, and the spout of Sagittarius teapot that is on the left. And it is on the left, and it follows up the path to the left of Ophiuchus, which is on the right-hand side of the slide at the top. Within the Milky Way, curiosities called yellow balls have been recently discovered, and these have been found to be several hundred to several thousand times the size of our solar system. And they are pictured here in the center of this image, taken by the NASA Spitzer Infrared Space Telescope. The yellow balls represent an intermediate stage of massive star formation that takes place before these stars can carve out cavities in the surrounding gas and dust. And the surrounding gas and dust is the green rimmed bubbles with the red interiors that can be seen in this image. NASA and JPL also partner with European Space Agency mission called Herschel, which has made detailed observations of surprisingly hot gas that may be orbiting or falling toward the supermassive black hole lurking at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And that is represented in this artist's illustration. When viewed only in visible light, this portion of the sky in Scorpius is somewhat unremarkable. but in infrared light, a beautiful reflection nebula can be seen in the claw of a constellation. This nebula has been assigned the rather uninspiring name of DG-129, and it is a cloud of gas and dust that is reflecting light from nearby bright stars. The brightest star in the constellation Scorpius, as well as one of the brightest stars in the night sky, is Antares, a red supergiant. Antares is about 10,000 times brighter than our own sun. The star seen in this image is surrounded by a yellowish nebula of gas that it has been expelling as it dies. It is of sufficient mass that it will one day become a supernova. Nebulas are famous for being identified with familiar shapes, and this nebula is appropriately named for its resemblance to the paw print of a very large cat. This nebula is home to tens of thousands of newly formed stars and has actually been found to be one of the most productive star-forming regions in the Milky Way galaxy. Serpens is unique among the constellations in that it is split into two non-contiguous parts, with the serpent's head to the west and the tail to the east. Between these two halves lies the constellation Ophiuchus, or serpent bearer. Serpens contains one of the most famous nebulas in the universe, the Eagle Nebula. Charles Messier, who was the first to catalog deep space objects, discovered it in June of 1764. Quite an amazing feat given the primitive nature of telescopes at that time. It contains several active regions of star forming, gas and dust, and within it lies probably the most famous region of space photographed by the Hubble Space Telescope. That's because this is one of the very first photos from the newly repaired Hubble, taken in 1995. And it is called the Pillars of Creation. And in this image, you can see enormous columns of interstellar gas and dust that are forming into new stars. And at the same time, these columns are being eroded away by the light from those same stars that have recently formed. The Hubble Space Telescope recently spotted within the Serpens Nebula a curious flapping motion around the star HBC 627, nicknamed the Bat Shadow. The flapping was observed over a span of about 400 days, and scientists think it could be the result of a planet pulling on the star's disk and thereby causing the undulating motion. This image was taken by Hubble's infrared camera. This is a really strange phenomenon in Serpens. It's called a Hoag's objects, and it is a ring galaxy that's named after its discoverer. It's a nearly perfect ring of hot blue young stars that circles the older yellow nucleus. This object's formation is a real puzzle to scientists because ring galaxies generally form when a smaller galaxy passes through the center of a larger one. However, in this case, there's no sign of any second galaxy that would have acted as the impetus for this to occur. So, yet another mystery to solve. Here's a nebula that's really unusual. Perfect squares are not often found in space, but that is obviously the shape of the Red Square Planetary Nebula in Serpens. It's one of the most symmetrical deep sky objects ever discovered. It's unclear how the central star produced the nebula shape, and it remains the subject of much speculation and research. Ophiuchus is the name of the constellation that lies somewhat between the two halves of Serpens. Its name is the Greek word for serpent bearer. This unusually shaped nebula is known as Kepler's supernova remnant. Light from this stellar explosion was first seen on Earth in October of 1604, a little more than 400 years ago. It was first studied in detail by astronomer Johannes Kepler, who thought he was looking at a new star. Supernova sightings are actually fairly rare, And even today, Kepler's supernova remains the most recent supernova to have been seen with the naked eye within our Milky Way galaxy. So what happened here? Where did all the stars go? What used to be considered a void in the sky of unknown composition has now been determined to be a black molecular cloud, or dark molecular cloud, sorry. This is a place where high concentration of dust and molecular gas absorb practically all the visible light emitted from the background stars. The dark surroundings make the interiors of these molecular clouds some of the coldest, most isolated places in the universe. Here is a really interesting phenomenon. The blue star near the center of this image is a very massive hot star plowing its way through a large cloud of interstellar dust and gas. It's called Zeta Ophiuchus. Astronomers theorize that this star was once part of a binary star system with an even more massive partner, which exploded as a supernova, thereby blasting away most of its mass. This freed Zeta Ophiuchus from its partner's gravitational pull, and it was hurled out of the star system. The Twin Jet Nebula is an especially striking example of a bipolar planetary nebula. Bipolar planetary nebula are formed when the central object is not a single star, but a binary system. Measurements of the rate of increase of this nebula's size suggest that the stellar outburst that formed the lobes occurred just 1,200 years ago, around 800 CE. This August, the giant planet Jupiter is in Sagittarius. It is the largest planet in the solar system and has a very distinctive appearance. Jupiter has 67 moons in orbit around it, and it was likely the first planet to form. It contains most of the dust and gas that was not incorporated into the sun. Jupiter's most distinctive feature is, of course, the Great Red Spot, which is a giant storm on Jupiter's surface. Similar to a hurricane on Earth, but certainly much larger in size, so big that 3 Earths could fit inside of it. There's debate over who first discovered the Great Red Spot, or if it was actually this same spot that was seen, but a confirmed sighting of a red spot was recorded by Giovanni Cassini in 1665. The horizontal belts and zones on the face of the planet are caused by churning layers of gas in Jupiter's upper atmosphere. The zones are caused by convection regions where warm gases rise, cool, and then sink again repeatedly in the upper atmosphere, much like a pan of boiling water on a stove. There have been several missions that have explored Jupiter, but it is the current Juno mission that is giving us the most amazing detailed information about the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field. One recent discovery has been called shallow lightning. This is an unusual and totally unexpected form of electrical discharge that originates from clouds that contain a solution of ammonia and water. Other new findings suggest that the violent thunderstorms for which Jupiter is known may form slushy ammonia-rich hailstones, which Juno's science team calls mushballs. They theorize that these mushballs essentially capture ammonia and water in the upper atmosphere and form it into semi-solid and then carry it into the depths of Jupiter's lower atmosphere. Jupiter played an important role in the advancement of science in the early 17th century due to the discoveries made by this man, Galileo Galilei. At the time, a tenet of the Catholic Church was that the Earth was a fixed body at the center of the universe, and everything in the universe revolved around it. But when Galileo pointed his telescope at Jupiter, he made a startling discovery. The planet had 4 stars in orbit around it. Within days, Galileo figured out that these stars were actually moons in orbit around Jupiter. His findings put him in bitter conflict with the doctrine of the Catholic Church. Galileo's discovery of Jupiter's moons supported the idea that the Earth revolved around the sun and not the other way around. This position, of course, has been confirmed to be true. However, at the time, Galileo was found guilty of heresy by the church and placed under house arrest until his death. But despite the fact that the church was the one that was in error, Pope John Paul II granted Galileo a full pardon for their mistake on October 31st, 1992, more than 350 years later. So that's bureaucracy for you. One of those stars Galileo discovered was Jupiter's moon Io, and it was in early March of 1979 that Voyager mission specialist Linda Morabito of JPL detected odd features around the limbs of the moon. She couldn't quite tell what they were, but further investigation of the images came as an enormous shock to the scientific community. What she saw was a plume from a volcanic eruption on the surface of Io. Never before had anything so remarkable been witnessed by any spacecraft. Io's volcanism is the result of the massive gravity of Jupiter pulling it in one direction and the gravitational pull of the outer moons pulling Io in the opposite direction. This stretches and flexes the moon, causing it to heat up to very high temperatures internally. Eventually, cracks form on Io's surface and molten rock material from below erupts onto the surface. Io is the most volcanically active body in the solar system, although these volcanoes have actually been determined to be more like geysers on Earth rather than explosive volcanoes like Mount St. Helens. This ongoing volcanic activity is constantly changing the surface features of the moon. Here's an image of Io's surface unpeeled. The surface is composed of sulfur compounds, and the various colors are caused by the colors of sulfur at different temperatures. White and yellow are the coolest temperatures, and red and black are the hottest. Here's an example of how rapidly the surface of Io can change. The image at the left was taken in April of 1997, and the photo on the right was taken that same year in September by the Galileo spacecraft. You can see the enormous black volcanic feature that formed in the red ring surrounding the volcanic feature called Pele in the September 1977 image. Another one of the moons discovered by Galileo was Europa. You can see in this image, it's dusted with a layer of volcanic debris from Io. Scientists have discovered that Europa has a water ice crust with large cracks in it. The probable reason for these cracks is that beneath the surface lies an ocean of warmer water. Not only that, the little bit of atmosphere the moon has contains oxygen. This means that the liquid water could become oxygenated through these cracks in the ice, making it a possible location that could host life outside of Earth. NASA hopes to launch a mission to Europa around 2025 or so using a hydrobot to explore the ocean, as illustrated here in this artist's impression of the subsurface layer of Europa. On to Aquarius. Aquarius is one of the oldest of the recognized constellations and is found in a region of space often called the sea due to its profusion of constellations with watery associations, such as Cetus the whale, Pisces the fish, and Eridanus the river. Aquarius has no particularly bright stars, and it takes a very dark sky to see the constellation. This nebula is called the Saturn Nebula, and it appears as a greenish blob even in small ground-based telescopes. It was first discovered by astronomer William Herschel in 1782. And because this object looked to him like the ring planet Saturn through his primitive telescope, he gave it the name planetary nebula. And this is exactly where that term comes from. As I've mentioned, this kind of nebula actually forms when a dying low-mass star, like the mass of our own sun, ejects its outer layers into space as it dies. Excuse me. Within the constellation Aquarius is another star in its death throes, producing what is called the helix or Eye of God nebula. This Hubble image shows the remarkable details of the eye's brighter inner region. Excuse me. The eye has been found to have a surprisingly complex geometry, with the white dot at the center being the nebula's hot central star. Excuse me. The constellation Pegasus represents the winged horse of Greek mythology. It was the offspring of the god Poseidon and the Gorgon Medusa. Stephan's quintet in Pegasus is a grouping of 5 galaxies, 4 of which are involved in a violent collision. The galaxy producing all the turmoil is the one in the center right, of the two bright stars in the middle of the image. The one on the lower right is more of just a photobomb. It's not really interacting with all the rest. This image was taken by the Chandra X-ray telescope. This grouping of stars is called a globular cluster and was given the name Messier 15. Globular clusters are groups of stars of a similar age held together by gravity, and this gravitational attraction gives the cluster its spherical shape. This one is believed to be about 12 billion years old, which makes it one of the oldest globular clusters known, and is also one of the densest, with most of its mass concentrated at the core. It contains more than 100,000 stars. This is the Einstein Cross, which is a gravitationally lensed quasar located in Pegasus. Quasars are astronomical objects of very high luminosity found in the centers of some galaxies. They're powered by gas spiraling at high velocity into an extremely large black hole. Perseus is the next constellation. Perseus was the slayer of a snake-headed Gorgon Medusa in Greek mythology. And it is the Perseus constellation that gives name to the Perseid meteor shower, as this is a direction from which the meteors seem to come from in the sky. The meteor shower is made up of tiny space debris from the Swift-Tuttle comet. The Perseids are a favorite of astronomers and stargazers because most years at its peak, you can see 60 to 100 meteors per hour in the dark sky. This year, around August 12th, the Perseid meteor shower reached its peak. Excuse me. It offered an incredible sight to people all over the Northern Hemisphere. The Perseus cluster is home to thousands of galaxies and is one of the most massive objects in the known universe. These galaxies are immersed in a vast cloud of multi-million degree gas, which creates the enormous bright loops, ripples, and jet-like streaks that are seen in this Chandra X-ray image. This is the constellation Draco, whose name is derived from the Latin term draconum, which means huge serpent. Draco is circumpolar, meaning that it never sets below the horizon and is always visible in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the Tadpole galaxy in Draco, which is an example of a disrupted barred spiral galaxy. Its most dramatic feature is its trail of stars that contain massive bright blue star clusters. Scientists believe that a more compact galaxy crossed in front of the Tadpole galaxy, causing gravitational forces to draw out the spiral galaxy stars, gas, and dust, thereby forming the conspicuous tail. The Cat's Eye Nebula is another planetary nebula, and it is structurally one of the most complex nebula ever seen. In the center, there is a bright, hot, dying star. The last constellation we're going to look at is Pisces, which is represented as the 2 fish in the night sky. This month, the planet Mars is in the constellation Pisces. And tomorrow, August 21st, the brightness of Mars in the night sky will rival that of the brightest star in the night sky, which is Sirius. You'll be able to see Mars rising above the eastern horizon tomorrow late in the evening. Now, humankind has been fascinated with Mars for millennia. Some of the earliest detailed records of Mars observation date back to the era of the ancient Egyptian astronomers as far back as the second millennium BCE, up through the Ptolemaic period, which ended with the death of Cleopatra in 30 BCE. Chinese records date from the Zhou dynasty around 1045 BCE. And Babylonian astronomers recorded detailed observations of Mars beginning from about 1700 BCE. Mars has been and continues to be a source of fascination for readers and moviegoers alike. Science fiction books abound with Mars as their theme, and from the earliest days of motion pictures, Mars has been the subject of many films. The earliest film being the Russian silent film Elita, from 1924. That's depicted in the upper right, the upper left. And the most famous recent book and movie being The Martian in 2015. The idea that life could exist on Mars has been around for centuries. Even well-respected scientists promoted the hypothesis that life exists on the red planet. Astronomer Percival Lowell in the early 20th century believed he saw canals on Mars through what was the most sophisticated telescope ever constructed to date. And he created the map you see here. And of course, how could there be canals on Mars without intelligent beings to build those canals? So, so the numerous missions to Mars have pretty much dispelled the notion that intelligent life exists on the planet, but those beliefs continue to persist to this day. One of the great successes of the early American space program was the Mariner 4 mission to Mars. It made its closest approach to the red planet on July 15, 1965, and took the very first photos of another planet from space. I was in junior high school at the time, and I remember my family sitting around our black and white TV set in anxious anticipation of seeing these first images on the evening news. Then suddenly they began to appear on the TV screen, and that's what we saw. And that was just the first one. Check these out. Yes, on July 14th, 1965, the Mariner spacecraft relayed the very first photos humans had ever seen of the surface of another world. And as unremarkable as these images appear to us today, I remember what a thrill it was to be able to see them on the TV news. In all, a total of 21 grainy black and white images were sent back through the distances of space through the spacecraft's high-gain antenna. These images were recorded on a 4-track tape recorder. Anybody out there old enough who remembers tape recorders, besides me and Harold? And it took 4 days to transmit all of them back to Earth. It seems almost laughable to us today, given the thousands of images coming from the Hubble and other space telescopes. But just look at the technology of the time. It's amazing they were able to capture any images at all. But still, that low-tech camera seen on the left was the foundation upon which all of our current high-tech imaging systems were built. Since Mariner 4, dozens of missions have been sent to Mars from many nations, beginning around the mid-1970s. And the red planet is rapidly giving up its secrets. What these missions have revealed is that the surface of Mars was once covered with liquid water and had been shaped by erosional and volcanic processes similar to those found on Earth. And these missions have revealed some very interesting and sometimes controversial features, like this one. In 1976, the Viking orbiter returned this image, which has been dubbed the face on Mars. And it was widely speculated that this was obvious and evidence of intelligent life and an advanced civilization on the planet. So when missions to Mars resumed in the late 1990s, this region was a high priority for subsequent imaging. And it revealed nothing, just a big disappointment, just an erosional feature, not unlike those found on Earth's surface. But just look at this. This is the happy face on Mars. And this feature has been photographed numerous times from many different angles, and it appears just as it does in this photo. And then there are these, the hearts on Mars. Some people are convinced that these surely could not be natural features and refuse to be swayed by overwhelming evidence to the contrary. So speculation about intelligent alien life on Mars continues to this day. Mars does have some pretty remarkable features, stretching over 2,500 miles long, 125 miles wide, and up to 6 miles deep in some places is Valles Marineris Canyon, a huge scar on the planet's face. That is some 10 times longer and 5 times deeper than Earth's Grand Canyon. It's the largest canyon in the solar system. And Mars boasts the largest volcano in the solar system at 16 miles high, and size of the state of Arizona at its base, now extinct, of course. The newest mission to Mars was launched just barely, not even a month ago, on July 30th, 2020. Named the Mars 2020 mission and carrying the rover Perseverance, the spacecraft will arrive at Mars on February 18th, 2021. It will search for signs of ancient microbial life, which will advance NASA's quest to explore the past habitability of the planet. The rover has a drill that will collect core samples of Martian rock and soil, which it will deposit in a rack of test tubes. These tubes will then be left at select locations for return to Earth. In a sample return mission, that will ferry them back to Earth for detailed analysis. Now, this mission is going to be very complicated. It will employ a fetch rover, which will collect the samples and deliver them to an ascent vehicle that will take them into orbit, while an orbiter launched from a different mission will rendezvous with that orbiter, take the samples, put them in a highly secure containment capsule for a return journey to Earth. And this may occur as early as 2031. The landing spot for NASA's Mars 2020 rover is the Jezero crater, which is home to deposits of hydrated silica, which is a mineral that happens to be very good at preserving microfossils and other signs of life. So it's an excellent site to be investigated by the Perseverance rover. Strapped to the rover's belly is the Mars helicopter Ingenuity, which scientists hope will achieve what they call a Wright brothers moment by testing the first powered flight on the red planet. If it's successful, this technology could enable other advanced robotic flying vehicles that might be included in future robotic and human missions to Mars. Now, Mars lacks an ozone layer like the one that shields Earth from lethal doses of ultraviolet radiation. But as of now, scientists still don't have a really good information about the amount of UV radiation reaching the Martian surface. So Mars 2020 will provide a more detailed understanding of the radiation environment in order to assess its effects on the astronauts, as well as help engineers design protective space suits and habitats. To achieve this goal, the Perseverance rover will also carry first spacesuit materials to Mars, including Nomex, which is a flame retardant material found in firefighter uniforms, Gore-Tex, which is waterproof but breathable, and Kevlar, which has been used in bulletproof vests, as well as other materials that will be used for making human habitat constructions. You see in the upper left-hand image is spacesuit designer Amy Ross of JPL. Now, what is the time frame for human exploration of Mars? Well, according to Elon Musk of SpaceX, a target date for human travel to the red planet is still set for 2024. Now, that's only 4 years from now, and considering that we have not even had a sample return mission yet, or checked out how spacesuit materials will react to radiation on the surface of the planet, I'm a little skeptical that he is going to achieve that goal. But as ambitious as he is no fool. And despite his ambitions, he recognizes the challenges that still face human exploration of Mars and is certainly not going to do anything to jeopardize that goal. NASA, on the other hand, has what I consider a more reasonable goal of creating human habitat on the moon first. This human lunar exploration has been given the mission name Artemis, and the plan is to send the next man and the first woman to the surface of the moon by 2024, and to establish a sustainable exploration there by the end of the decade. NASA will then use what is learned on the moon to prepare for humanity's next giant leap, sending astronauts to Mars. So we'll see who gets to Mars first and lives to tell the story. However the story unfolds, Mars will continue to be a priority for explorations for many decades to come. So tonight we've traveled to the farthest reaches of the universe, but as it's said, there's no place like home. And as we arrive back on Earth, I think that the sight of our planet from space is one of the most beautiful images that I have shared with you tonight. And as this slide presentation has shown, there's so much more out there that can be seen with our eyes and even in most ground-based telescopes. So the next time you look up at the night sky, think of some of the images you've seen tonight and how extraordinarily fortunate we are to live at a time when the splendors of the universe can be revealed to us through the ingenuity, persistence, and dedication of scientists and engineers on the telescopes they have created that allow us to peer deeply into space and see some of these amazing celestial wonders hidden in our night sky. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. And if you have any questions, I will do my best